So, continue with our study through the Psalms. Tonight we're in Psalm 28. Psalm 28 is a pretty short psalm, but it's only nine verses. But I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that even as short as it is, how hard it hits home. I know a lot of people and respect and admire a lot of people who are of very few words, but when they do speak, it is something to take serious and something to listen to. This is another Psalm of David, and I'm tonight reading from the New King James Version. My Bible gives it a title, Rejoicing in an Answered Prayer. I read that title when I began the study, and then I read the psalm, and I thought, I had a moment where I had to ask, is this really a rejoicing in an answered prayer? Is it praise, or how am I supposed to take this? And where the study ended up taking me, I wasn't expecting to go, and it burdened my heart some. The more I think about the state of our church, the American church, or the Western church, or just the church in general. I think it was John MacArthur said that there's a common saying in the church. I don't know, I've never heard it until I heard him say it, that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the gospel. That it is in persecution that the church grows and the church truly flourishes. And when I read this and I heard that, and it kind of went together, and they don't sound like they would go together, but I'm hoping I can tie them in how I think God is speaking. And it's funny, I'm not the only one saying this stuff. I'm reading it and I'm hearing it in other places, and I believe God's working to prepare us for his second coming, or for the trials that are to come, or to prepare our hearts for the truth, which is what we're supposed to be preparing for always. But this is what it says. Starting in verse 1. To you will I cry, O Lord, my rock. Do not be silent to me, lest if you are silent to me, I become like those who go down to the pit. Hear the voice of my supplications when I cry to you, when I lift up my hands toward your holy sanctuary. Do not take me away with the wicked and with the workers of iniquity, who speak peace to their neighbors, but evil is in their hearts. Give them according to their deeds and according to the wickedness of their endeavors. Give them according to the work of their hands. Render to them what they deserve, because they do not regard the works of the Lord, nor the operation of his hands. He shall destroy them and not build them up. Blessed be the Lord, because he has heard the voice of my supplications. The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusted in him, and I am helped. Therefore, my heart greatly rejoices, and with my song I will praise him. The Lord is their strength, and he is the saving refuge of his anointed. Save your people and bless your inheritance. Shepherd them also and bear them up forever. David is a poet, but he's not a poet without structure. The first part of this psalm I want to come back to, because it lays a heavy toll on the state of the church, what can be gleaned from what David says here. The second part is his petition to God. And here's something that if you're like me, you read something like this second part where David is saying, if you read the New Living Translation, it's a little more coarse, and he's asking God to judge and punish those evil people. And I immediately thought, am I allowed to pray like that? Am I allowed to ask for bad people to be punished? Because aren't I supposed to be asking for everyone to be saved and forgive them, for they know not what they do against me? And when persecution comes my way, because this is the one thing that has been bothering me the most, and I don't have an answer for it, but I'm studying it very hard. When persecution does come our way for righteousness' sake, which is what Jesus says, blessed are the persecuted for righteousness' sake. When persecution does come our way, am I allowed to fight? Or am I supposed to take it? What happens when they come to arrest me and take my kids? What happens if I was in the Colosseum, if it was first century Rome, and I was in the dungeon of the Colosseum with my children, and they're opening the door to send us out to the lions? What do? If I knew that was coming, what should I do? Should I have fought the Roman soldiers so that we're not arrested? Or would that be wrong? Because persecution is something that faces the church. It doesn't face us in the American church, but it definitely faces the church. And it will face us someday. It's something we need to prepare for and think about. What is the right thing to do? And I'm studying that. I believe I know the answer, but I'm not going to preach on something I believe. I'm going to preach on something I know. But here, David is not asking God to judge someone because of what they did to him. He's not asking God or petitioning God to punish them because they did him wrong or spoke iniquity about him. He says very clearly in verse 5, because they do not regard the works of the Lord. He hates their sin. He hates their disbelief. He hates their iniquity, that they work against God and against the church. So he says righteously, this is righteous judgment. He's asking God to take on righteous judgment and tear them down. And we can pray that too. That there's an attack against us as Christian believers, against the church, that we need to ask God to take care of that, to show righteous judgment. I don't want to live in a world where I'm going to be persecuted for what I believe, but I'm not surprised by it because Jesus never told us anything different. The first century, second century, third century Christians, they weren't surprised when they were arrested or persecuted. They were expecting it. And the New Testament even tells us in James and 1 Peter and Timothy that they rejoiced in it, that they count it as joy. Count it as gladness when you suffer these trials. Because it is, and this is another thing that John MacArthur says, it is the persecuted church that is the strongest church. You can find the strongest church in the world is that which is persecuted. And he gave an example of China over the last few decades. They were massacred as Christians in the 1960s and 70s and 80s in communist China. But they have tens of millions of Christians in a place where they shouldn't have any Christians because they're trying to weed it out openly. They're saying, they have said for decades, we want to do away with all religions so nothing stands except the communist state. There is communism and only communism. And in that, where there was one story where about 1966, 67, they had a Bible burning celebration where they went around and they confiscated all the Bibles, and they had people denounce their faith, and if they didn't, they were tortured for days. And all you had to do was say that, you denounce Christianity, and they say Christianity or communism. All you got to do is say communism, and they'll leave you alone. Otherwise, they'll beat you until almost dead, and many people did die. And then they burned all the Bibles. In a place where that was happening, they have tens of millions of Christians. Opposite of them, and I think of China, I automatically think of Japan. They're right side by side, and they're right there. Japan has had hundreds of missionary organizations that have been there. And if you know anything about geography, you know that China is like this, and Japan is like that, right? And you would think that Japan would be easier to minister to. Well, they're not. As many missions as they've had a very low conversion rate in Japan, and they're predominantly pagan. Taoism, Hinduism is there, Buddhism is there, but they're predominantly pagan. And the reason that persecution produces spiritual growth is because it is a purifying process. It weeds out the hypocrites. People will not stay true to religion, but will stay true to Christ. If we truly believe in Jesus Christ, if we're truly saved, we'll stay true to Him. If we're doing church just to be doing church, we won't do it. They won't do it anymore. And we'll get back to that. But what David is saying in this second part of this song is he's asking God to deal with those who oppose Him. Not David, but God. Deal with those who oppose God. Because God's work needs to be done. And as long as we're suffering and struggling with fighting against those that oppose Him, then we're fighting a battle. We can't gain any ground. We can't do God's work if we're held down from saying anything about Him. Then in the third section of this psalm, it begins with a plea to hear Him. And then he gives the petition. And then in the third part, he says that it's been answered. He thanks God for answering his prayer before it's been answered. And I wish I had that kind of faith. I'm working on it. I really am. But I've heard people say, have you ever heard of the name it and claim it gospel? Yeah. And that's kind of, if you had enough faith to be healed, you would be. So pray to be healed and then thank God for healing you before He does it. And He'll do it. There is some truth to that, but not like they claim it. Not like that is. What David is doing here, he's thanking Him for hearing him. Remember the first thing he said is, do not be silent to me, lest if you are silent to me, I become like those who go down to the pit. In the New Living Translation and the NIV, like I said, it's a little more coarse. In this section, it'll say something to the effect of, if you don't hear me, I might as well give up and die. I just might as well give up and die. When's the last time you prayed to God and said, if you don't hear me and answer my prayer, I'll just give up and I'll die? I'm not that bold. I'm not that bold. But David said that if you didn't hear me, what he's saying is, if you don't answer my prayer, I give up on you and I'm leaving and I'm dying and it don't matter. He said, don't not hear me. Don't be silent to me. Please hear me. Because if you don't hear me, I might as well give up and I might as well quit. Because you are everything. You're everything to me. And I do everything. Anything that I have or anything that's going to be is from you. And that's the thing that that's where I want to stay for the next couple of minutes and tell you where my heart is and where I'm burdened for the church, not Tilden. I am burdened for Tilden, don't get me wrong. But it's not just Tilden that I'm burdened for. I don't know what the church is going to look like in 20 years. In 30 years, 50 years, I don't know. But I tell you, when you've got David, who is a king of Israel, who has everything that he could want, and he could be arrogant, he could be what powerful people are. He could say, look what I have done. I've done this and I've done that, and it's all because of me. And God has blessed me, but it's because I deserve it. And we may not say that out loud, but a lot of people live in a way that says, and Christians too, especially on social media, because if social media Christians are the example of what Jesus is, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. But a lot of people act as if you're not a Christian because you're not smart enough, because you weren't raised right, you're a heathen, or because you're just a nasty, perverted, wicked worker of iniquity who is denying the truth, whatever. Some of those things may be true, but is that defending our faith with gentleness and kindness? It's not. And it's also not to say that the kind of thing that, yeah, God has blessed me and I have the things that I have, but it's because I've been faithful. That's not the way it works. There are a lot of faithful people that don't have anything. Some of the most faithful people are hungry in the world. It doesn't take much time and much research to see how good we have it versus how bad everybody else does. There are churches right now in places like Nigeria, especially, of course, China, but they say that they feel forgotten. They're forgotten because people will mention them and their persecution and their trials in a good sermon illustration, but then that's about as far as it goes. They may get some money here and there. Every now and again, a missionary may come and give them some Bibles or give them some material and some school stuff, or even the Operation Christmas Child shoe boxes. They get stuff every now and again. But for the most people, or for the most part, people don't really want to part with their time or their money. And what we do is we mention them and then we don't think about it anymore because it's so far removed from us that thinking about it depresses us. And I just want to forget that that's even happening because it's not going to happen to me. Thank God I was born in this country because God could have put me there, you know, which is the wrong attitude, which was what Jesus, or what David is saying here. He begins when he could say, because I am King of Israel and you've anointed me, or because I've been blessed so much, I'm crying to you to do this thing because I know it's the right thing to do. But he's not. He's saying, to you I will cry, O Lord, my rock, my foundation, the thing I stand on. Do not be silent to me. Because if you are silent to me, I'll become like those who go down to the pit. I might as well die. When we come to church, why do we come to church? That's the question that's bothering me, I think, the most. Do we come to church because it's our church? Because we feel good when we're here? Because we have a right to be here? The Constitution says we have a right to be here. Or do we come here so other people can see it? Do we come here so other people can see our light and how important it is for us to worship God and Jesus Christ? And do we come here for them, not for us? See, that's where I think the American church has failed, is we've put faith in the Constitution, which gives us the right to be here. It does. But if it didn't, if they took that away, would we still be able to be a church? If they closed the doors and took the building, would we still, whose house would we meet in? We're going to start that ministry because I want to. If they take our Bibles, who's going to hide one? How are we going to do that? How are we going to be an underground church? Because we have to be. The church doesn't stop just because the government doesn't let us have one. Not just our government, but any government. There has to be a way to share the gospel. The persecuted church is the growing church. I've heard it said that the reason that the biggest flaw in the American church is that it's superficial and hypocritical to the point that we've lost sight of it. Because to be a Christian in the United States does not cost us anything. There's no cost. There's no real fear of persecution. Nobody's taking our jobs. You don't have to fill out a form or an application that says, are you a Christian, or whatever. And if you say Christian, you can't work here. Nobody's threatening our lives. In other parts of the world and throughout church history, to be a Christian meant to sacrifice your life. The 1st century, 2nd century, 5th century, Middle Ages, all these people, when they did things for Jesus Christ, they did them knowing that it may get them killed, and they were perfectly okay with that. John Wycliffe began translating the Bible into English, and they killed him. The Catholic Church killed him for it because they didn't want the Bible to be in the hands of every person. They hated him so much when they killed him. They waited a few years, they dug him up, and then they burned him. Burned his bones. That's how much they hated him. They had a big celebration about it. William Tyndale, his dying words before they put him on a stake, and he was also one who was translating the Bible into English. They put him on a stake, and they were going to set it on fire, but before that, they were going to strangle him. And right before they strangled him, he prayed, Lord, let the King of England's eyes be opened to the truth, And then they killed him. And it wasn't but many years later, 10, 20 years later or something, that we got the Geneva Bible and the King James Version of the Bible, which came from mainly the work that Tyndale and Wycliffe did. They took their translations and said, they've kind of already done the work. Let's just put it over here. But people like that are the reason we have the Bible. People like you are the reason that Christians have, that I met a Christian who taught me about Jesus. And it's my job now to carry on what you've done in this world, and I'm looking toward where the church is going, and I'm afraid that the people I'm teaching, they're going to have it really bad. They're going to have a rough way. But we have to prepare them for that. Not to be surprised when persecution comes, but to pray prayers like this, to say, do not be silent to me. Because if you are, I might as well die in this world. But also, to render to them what they deserve, because they do not regard the works of the Lord. That the people that oppose us will get what they deserve. But even then, that we pray for them. Paul and Silas in prison prayed for their captors, and they saved some. There's a story, I'm sure you know it. They were in prison, and an angel came, and an earthquake, and they were able to escape, and the Roman soldier came out, and I was ready to fall onto his sword, because, the prisoners are out. What happens to the Romans if they lose a prisoner? Well, they're all going to die. That's the Roman way. And Paul comes out and says, whoa, 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 we're all here. And then he's like, what are you still doing here? And he explained it to them that whatever. And what does he end up doing? He takes Paul and Silas into his home, and every one of them are saved. That's how the gospel works. That's how the Holy Spirit works in all of us. When the Romans led them out into the Colosseum, to the circus or the games, they led them out, man, woman, and child. I'm not ready for that. But God will give me strength in that moment to know that it's a moment of pain. It's a moment of pain for an eternity of salvation and joy. And here's how I've heard it put. And it's the best thing I've ever heard, and I got to share it. It's not mine, but I got to share it. If you've ever seen the ocean, this hopefully will give us some perspective on why we do church, and why we should continue to do church, and why we have to be a church even when we're not a church. We don't have a building, that we are. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in His name. They can take our church building, they can take our Bibles, but they cannot take Jesus Christ. They cannot take the truth of it. Because it works. They see us in persecution. They see us when they lead us out of the Colosseum and we're killed. And they say, why would those people die like that? They must be stupid. But then 100 and 200. And out of all of those people that have died, there's those in the crowd that watched and said, there's something to this. There's more to this. That's how the church grew in Rome. Because remember, think about this too. When we talk about that, when we talk about the very early church in Rome, we talk about Rome and Christians. But we forget to remember that these Christians were Romans. They were Romans. Paul and Silas, and they were freed. One time, they were freed from prison once because they were beaten. And once the captors realized that they were Roman citizens, it's illegal to beat a Roman citizen. So you better let them go. And so they let them go without even a trial. But these Romans, now that are Christians, they treat them like dogs. They're not Christians anymore. It's like we're Americans. But we're American Christians. Are you a Christian before you're an American? That's what got them killed, is they were Christians before they were Roman. So once you say that, you denounce the fact that you're a Roman. It's the same way with us. Maybe not right now, but our perspective is on the eternal. If you've ever seen the ocean, you know how beautiful it is and how small it makes you feel. You feel the wind off of it, and you look and you say, how can anybody look at this and not see a glorious God and a creator? You can't see the end of it. If you've ever really paid any attention to it, you can look out and see that it's round. You can't see all the way across it. There's too much of it. And then what your mind goes to, how deep is this thing? It goes forever and ever. This is what life is. You walk out into the water, you take your hand, you cup your hand, you scoop up the water. As soon as you scoop up the water, it starts leaking through your fingers. As soon as you scoop it up, no matter how well you cup it, as soon as you scoop it up, it starts leaking. It starts You lose it, no matter how hard you try. Our earthly life is like the water in our hands. From the moment we're born until the minute we die, we're losing it. And what man does, what we all do, is what the world does, is it focuses on this water that's cupped in the hand and trying not to lose it and trying to keep every little part of it as much as you can and do as much with it as you can. But eventually it will go away. But for us, our focus isn't on the water in our hands, but the whole ocean that we're promised. All of eternity and the expanse of what we can't even understand. What's on the other side of it? What's underneath it? And how far does it go? It's not this. It's not about this. It's about that. That's why we come to church. That's why we put God first in everything. We put him first in our prayer. It should be, God, I'm dealing with something and I need your help. Instead of, I'm dealing with something, this is what I'm going to do, and I hope God's with me in it. Which is most of the time how we pray. It should always be God first. If we put God first, the church will grow. It will sustain. If we put God first, people will be saved because they'll see it in us. If we put God first, we can say what David said in the last part here. The Lord is their strength. That's us. And he is the saving refuge of his anointed. That's us. Save your people and bless your inheritance. That's us. We're Jesus' inheritance. We are the prize and the treasure that he went to the cross for. All people. Everyone that is to be saved. Shepherd them also. That's lead us in through the valley and when it's dark, and lead us and let him guide us and bear them up forever. If we truly believe that and we live that way, when the time comes, we won't fall away from it. We won't run away. When there is persecution, we can withstand it. Not because of us, not because of anything we've done, but because his strength, the strength that he gives us and our faith. And like David said, David's not saying, I can do these things. He's saying, do this for me because I trust in you. That's what he's saying. And so I hope that we can all work to be stronger in our faith, but not because of us, but because we put God first. The more we put him first, the less we lean on ourselves. When I'm in financial trouble, I don't need to immediately go to my bank account and see how much I've got. I need to say, God, I'm in financial trouble. And I believe that you'll get me through it no matter what that means. Even though we are self-sufficient people, we like to do things on our own, and we don't want to, the human nature is, I don't want to bother God with my little problems. And what's he tell us to do? Bring everything to him in prayer. Everything. He wants to be first in our lives. He wants us to come to him. He's not frustrated he's not the kind of father that gets frustrated like I do. When my kids come to me the 18th time and tell me they have to go potty. And I'm like, how many times in a day do you pee? How's that possible? He's not like that. He wants me every single time to look up to him because that glorifies him. And not just because for me, other people see us do that too. And they see it, they really see it when they have to pay attention to it. And right now, they're paying attention. They're really paying attention. There's no way you can not see what's happening in the world, in our country. There's no way that people are ignoring. They're choosing sides. They're either with Christ or they're for him or against him. And so a line is being drawn in the sand, and we have to stand, and we have to teach those that are coming after us to stand so they can be saved the way I was because of what you taught people that I met. So maybe we can teach somebody else so they can teach somebody else and they can teach somebody else. And in times of persecution or struggles or sicknesses or whatever it is, they look to God and they believe in him and they trust in him regardless of the outcome. And then the people around them say, there's something to this. There's something to this. It's not just a club. It's not just some weird belief. There's something to it. It's real. So that's where I hope the church goes from here. Even if it is a purifying process, I hope that it does become purified. We are Christ's bride. We should be clean for him. He deserves no less. But all he ever asked for was us. All he ever asked for was us the way we are, just to believe in him. Does anybody have anything they want to add to that before we close? If not, I'll ask you to go with me to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, we humbly come to you as servants and believers. We pray that we are counted in the Lamb's Book of Life, that we are those good and faithful servants, that they're doing your work and doing it for the right reasons, that we're coming to church to glorify your name above all else and to show others about you, to shine a light in the community, but not to make ourselves feel better or make ourselves feel worthy or righteous, but to do it for the right reason, that our motives are to save souls. We pray that you give us the opportunity to do that, whatever that means. We pray that you give us strength when we need it. We pray that you work judgment on all those who oppose you, and that you lift up those who are for you, that you lead us when we need to be led, that you guide us in the way we should go, and you give us strength to walk in it. We pray for our leaders of this country, but also for all those that are forgotten, all those people who are being persecuted throughout the world and still arrested, martyred for the faith. We don't want to forget anyone at all, and let us know if there's anything that we can do for those people. We pray that you give them peace and comfort, but that you deliver them from all their pain and their struggles and their suffering. We pray that you be with this church and you help it grow, not for its own sake, but for yours. We pray for spiritual growth, and that we can be a light for other people, that they can see the truth of who you are and what you did through your Son, Jesus Christ, on the cross for all of us. It's in Jesus' holy name that we pray. Amen.